Hi, my name is Temjana Trpkoska, but a lot of you probably can't pronounce that, so you can just call me Taylor. Now, before I start my talk, how many of you have heard of the Balkans? Some of you, that's good. How many of you have heard of Macedonia? Quite a lot of you, okay. Well, this is Macedonia. As you can see, it's a pretty average country. Now, this is Macedonia compared to the rest of the Balkans. Still, it's a pretty normal country. But then you see Macedonia on a map of Europe. It's a bit smaller, but Europe's a pretty big place. But then this is Macedonia on a map of the whole world. It's just that small red dot there. That's where I'm from. I came to China 4 years ago because of my mom's job, and I've been living here ever since. I know for a lot of you, moving countries isn't that big of a deal and you're pretty used to it, but for me it was a pretty big deal because it was my first time living in a different country. And Macedonia and China are pretty different. For one, Macedonia has a population of 2 million. Beijing itself has a population of 21 million. And Shunyi, the district we're in right now, has a population of 1 million people itself. Apart from that, the area difference was also huge. Macedonia is almost 10,000 miles squared. China has a surface area of 3 million miles squared. As you can see, that's pretty difficult to adapt to, as I was so used to walking to school in 5 minutes. My grandparents were a 15-minute walk, and the closest shop was in the building right next to me. Now, school is a 30-minute walk. My grandparents are in a completely different country, and the shop that we go to most often is a 10-minute car ride. Now, although moving to China is a huge privilege, and a lot of people say that, I don't disagree, but it doesn't come without its challenges. For one, cultural differences were something very difficult for me to adapt to, the most common being the language. Chinese is a very difficult language to learn, especially as a foreigner. And when I first came into the country, I had this expectation that people would be able to speak English, and I was very wrong. And I couldn't speak any Chinese either. The only word I know was ni hao, which isn't going to get you very far. Apart from that, I was so used to being able to interact with all of my friends, my brother's friends, my parents' friends, because it's such a small place and you know basically everyone. Socializing was such a large part of my life. But now, I couldn't speak the language, and it was very rare that you would see the same person more than twice when you were outside. So these interactions that were such a huge and vital part of my life, I was now missing out on, especially in my teenage years when they're so important. Apart from that, adapting to big city life was also very difficult for me. I'm from the capital city of Macedonia, Skopje, but compared to Beijing, it's quite small. For one, paying. In China, as a lot of us know, you use your phone. But in Macedonia, I was so used to carrying a wallet with me with cash, and even people who have credit and debit cards, they would still use cash for most transactions. I was so used to having to count if I had the right amount of money and if I was getting the right amount of change. However, in Beijing, all I have to do is pull out my phone and the cashier or the cash register has to scan the QR code and it takes the right amount of money. And all I have to do now is just make sure that my phone is charged so that I can survive. Apart from that, one thing that I didn't expect to be such a difference that I would need to get adapted to was transport methods. In Macedonia, we had a car, and although we would use it, the other method of transport that I would use was walking because everything was so nearby and I didn't really need to travel that far away. However, in Beijing as a foreigner, it's very difficult to get a car, and so you either use a taxi or use public transport. I had been in a taxi in Macedonia. I was used to that at least a few times. I had been in buses, not that often, but I have. But one method of transport that was very new and abstract to me were subways. We don't have a subway in Macedonia. We have a train, but I had never been on one. So subways were a completely new world to me. I remember that day when we had to go and get our bus passes, our subway passes, and having to go through that security check and having to learn how to use the map with all of the lines, learning where the different colors go and the different area names. It was so difficult, and it is still to this day, but it was such a huge change because it was going to be one of my main modes of transport for a while. So it was very difficult to adapt to, especially in a short period of time. However, eventually I've overcome most of these challenges. I still don't speak Chinese fluently, but I'm learning more and more each day. I take Chinese lessons and I can hold a pretty basic conversations. But I also have friends who are going through a lot of the same stuff as me, who I can go to and ask for help and support. A lot of those friends are also Chinese, so I can go and ask them if I want to learn a new word or a new phrase, or if I don't understand something about the culture. I feel free to go to them and ask for help. I've also come to the realization that China is a second home to me. I'm 15 now, I'm almost turning 16. And I spent 4 years of my life in China. That's almost a third of my life that I've spent here. And so it's coming to the realization that China is a second home to me. I know that I'm going to finish high school here, and in the future, I'm probably going to finish university in a different country. And going back to Macedonia, long term, is going to be many years away, if at all. And so coming to the realization that I will always carry Macedonia with me in my heart is the most important thing that I've learned in these last 4 years that I've been in China.